Remember, 83% of people will stick with you because of the experience, even if they're paying more. That's pretty telling that they want both the relationship and the experience and the outcome. So either one of them missing is a threat. And the interesting piece is if you are delivering the outcomes and you don't have the customer experience, you are more likely to have that unexpected churn. They're more likely to just blindside you.
Hey guys, Damian Stevens, host of MSP Mindset. Join me today as I got the privilege of speaking with Marnie Stockman, who's best known as author of so many books and the CEO of Life Cycle Insights. If you're like me, you may have thought of customer success as something you'll get to later, or a nice to have, or maybe even associated with those pain in the butt QBRs. I learned I can double or triple the revenue of your MSP in a year if I follow this pragmatic guide. She literally wrote the book called Literally the Book on Customer Success for MSPs. You're not going to want to miss out on our conversation today. So I know we're going to talk a lot about customer success today, but you have a pretty unconventional path, especially for MSPs. So for everybody that's not familiar, tell me how a teacher got into the MSP space.
So as I always say, if anybody's seen me live when I go to present, I started out as a high school math teacher. So you may be wondering why you should listen to me. And then I will say that is because I sold pre-calc to 16-year-olds. So I know something about sales and customer success. And you watch them process that of like, right, teachers are selling something to a captive but completely disinterested audience, right?
Completely.
Yeah, completely. 16-year-olds in pre-calc, that's a hard sell. So, if you can do that well, then you probably have some skills folks didn't think about. And it also, so it explains to them why they should listen to me. And then it also explains to them why they get the heebie-jeebies when I walk behind them, because they're like, oh, she's going to check my homework or look over my shoulder and see what I'm doing wrong. And it's funny because once I say that, they'll say like, yeah, you really do project that. You kind of have this little fear thing going on. I'm like, I rarely have to assign detention in a presentation, but I will do it if you get out of hand. So check yourself. So
it's good this is virtual.
I'm less scary virtually. So that was teaching and sort of why you could connect the dots on like, how do you get from here to there? So I became the math supervisor and accountability coordinator. So typically when I say accountability coordinator, MSPs sort of sit up like, well, I like that word, right? That sounds like data and things. So what does that mean? So I was in charge of all of the testing and all of the data for the school system. So if you have a child and they have taken a state test of any kind, if they have taken, anything that's been bubble sheeted or computer assigned and scored, I was in charge of that. And then the data and the analysis of that data, right? Where can we do better, et cetera. So in the course of doing that, I was using an ed tech platform that was phenomenal at the ability to let us build our own assessments, report on the data, get actionable data. Because so many times, and I say this to MSPs all of the time, if you are collecting data and you are not doing anything with it, what are you doing? You're wasting the collection time, the services of just having the data anywhere, like bandwidth, CPU, whatever, right? I wasn't an MSP and I don't play one on TV, so I'll get all the lingo wrong, right? RAM, ROM, and all the other things. You're just wasting it if you're not doing anything with the data, right? So I was using this platform, loved the capability, really flexible reporting that made it very easy for me to say, School X is very successful here, School Y, and specifically these students need help here. So, and I was one of those customers that every vendor and MSP will recognize that was really pretty adamant about what I needed and what I wanted from the platform. So they, after one of their conferences, they literally they walked me to the car. I thought oh, I've flirted with this company too long. Now they're going to ask me out. And they did. So they asked me if I would come work for them and run customer success. So that is when I made the leap. In education, when you leave the classroom and go to the board office, that's moving to the dark side. And then when you go from the board office to the vendor, that's moving to the dark side again. So I'm double dark side on the vendor world. And so I worked in an ed tech company. And that ed tech company was like 60 employees when I got there. I think I was 57. And was there for, I guess, 4-ish years. And then a string of acquisitions happened. And so we got acquired 3 times within 18 months. Now,
Yikes.
One acquisition ruffles feathers, even, regardless. But 3 in 18 months can be catastrophic, especially depending on the company that does the acquiring. So we had a good, bad, and ugly version of acquisitions. But because I ran customer success, every time I got acquired, they would cut half my team, and then they would double the clients overnight. Actually, they'd cut a third of the team, 30%, and then they would double clients overnight. So it made it really hard to support customer success. But I got very good at creating processes quickly in order to automate and work in bulk as best as possible with half the resources, right? And that's where MSPs often look of like, how do I get the human side more efficient when I spend all my day automating on the technical side? They don't understand how to do that with the human element. So after the third acquisition, my business partner, Nick, and we weren't business partners at the time, but he said like, next time we get acquired, we should own the company so that we don't ever let this type of acquisition happen again. So we knew how we wanted to run a company. He ran support and I ran success. So we very much knew we wanted raving fans, transparency, get stuff done, like listen to our clients and do what they need. And with my education background, we knew we wanted to do it by educating, and entertaining if you can. And so we were out looking for a problem to solve. And I had played volleyball with someone who was an IT guy. Like literally that's the only title I knew.
Sure.
And
we're all IT
yeah,
guys.
And that was Alex Farling. He knew that I was in education, so he thought I was still a teacher. Like that's how much we didn't talk while we were playing volleyball. But this one night we were playing and we were both on opposite sides of the net and setting back and forth. And I said, do you have any problems in the IT space, right, that can be solved with data reporting, analytics, et cetera? And he said, yeah, I spent 6 hours a day, like got salty quick, cobbling together, which I now know is like almost an industry standard, cobbling together my quarterly business review. I feel like it should be automated. It should definitely be more strategic. I'm not even sure what we're delivering is important. And running customer success, I've seen the good, bad, and ugly of QBRs. So that was the only acronym he said for the next hour that I recognized. I mean, he told me he was an MSP, which I thought meant Maryland State Police. So I learned what managed service providers were. I learned what a PSA was, what an RMM was, right, and all these other things. And he kind of Shark Tank pitched Nick and me on the idea of could we build a QBR platform. And so that was the beginning of Lifecycle Insights. So that is how you get from there to there without, again, having ever been an MSP.
Have you ever wondered if you could recover your backups? Let me ask a better question. Have you ever had a backup fail to recover? Have you ever lost data? Yeah, that's me. Here's what's crazy. 58% of recoveries fail to recover. So if you think it's just you couldn't be more wrong. What are we going to do about that? Well, you've got 2 options. Enter Servosity. What we do and what we exist to do is test your backups and manage them for you. We test every volume, every single day. We do weekly testing, monthly testing, and quarterly testing. And you can hand off the drudgery and babysitting of backups and the day-to-day management to our team that monitors your backups for you. It's time to level up your backup game. One way you can do that is visit servosity.com/learn more if you'd like to take the process that I've spent the last 18 years building and steal it and apply it to your MSP so that you can level up your backup game. Check out the link below in the description or visit servosity.com/learn more. Interesting. I want to actually take a step back, and for all the MSPs that are just keeping the lights
Yeah.
on, being reactive,
Yeah.
responsive. Like, why customer service? Because it seems really obvious. Like, I probably need some more. I need new logos,
Yeah.
right? I need new accounts,
Yeah.
maybe, and maybe that's one path to growth. But help me understand why CS and the role there, and is that I've got other follow-up questions, but let's start with that one.
Well, first, it's a lot more expensive to get a new logo than it is to keep the one that you have. So happy, healthy clients is a sign of a happy, healthy business. If you ever want to sell your business, you in fact are going to have to guarantee someone that the current customers that you have are going to stay your customers. So it is really about retention. And the other piece is, it's shocking to me because the MSPs absolutely do tell me exactly what you just said, right? Like, I think I need sales as opposed to customer success because I need logos. And out of the same mouth that just told me that, they will say they get all of their existing business from referrals. Like, do you know how you get referrals? Right. With good customer success. So then they make the leap.
No, I don't think we know how we get referrals.
Okay.
But,
because they don't make the right leap in thinking it must be good customer success and that's how we make referrals. And if you put a customer success process in place, you are basically creating the referral program that your company needs to be able to scale.
I want to interrupt there for a second because I feel like there's so many MSPs. So if you're listening and this is you, let me know. But when I was in MSP, there was this myth, I don't know what word you want to call it, that we're different. And we just, we're the only ones that don't do geek speak.
Right. I would like to argue that one. Go ahead.
Right. It's that kind of thing. And therefore, and I think it was, most of the time it's coming from a good place. For sure. We work really hard. We're really good. We're really honest. I pay my people fairly. They're all good people. I've hired well. So I think it's coming from a good place. For sure. But I think there's this perception that because I've done those things, referrals magically come. Yeah. And so I'm not even sure a lot of us are aware that there needs to be something else than that.
Yeah, customer success is a young industry, a young department compared to sales. Sales have existed ever since somebody had a rock and someone else had a fish and they wanted the other thing, right? So selling is everything you do. You're always trying to get something you don't have, and it might be, not an actual tangible product, but selling's existed a long time. Customer success hasn't been around so long, right? I could just cram you over the head with a rock and take the fish. I'm not really worried about customer success in the caveman days. I'm going to fight it out. But what folks have realized is that, especially in the world of social media, where anything you do wrong is going to be amplified at levels that only Reddit can produce, and TikTok, it can produce it as well, right? That customer success can amplify your message, and that it's interesting, the statistics on customer success. It's like 83% of clients will stay with someone at a higher cost because of customer success, as opposed to just the product itself. And you always hear people do business with people, not with companies. And you know what? The people is what makes the customer success. My son and I talk about this all the time because he's a charming soul, and he gets more things, not just because he's good at delivering customer success, but because he understands it. He, in fact, knows how to make you better at customer success to get him what he wants. And people don't think, they just think, like you said, do the job, and then the magic happens. But in fact, if you have a process in place to really establish that you are in fact helping your customer be successful, that will make you more successful. And if you ever want to exit your business, like I said before, you have to demonstrate that that is predictable. So people often talk about predictable sales, but one of the most important things is predictable churn or lack thereof. So one of my favorite KPIs, OKRs, goals, like whatever you want, whatever 3 letters you want to call it, for customer success is 0 unreported churn. I should never lose a customer where I didn't suspect I was going to lose a customer. So you should have processes in place, relationships in place to understand where that churn could come. And again, if you ever want to sell your company, you have to know that. Because I'm not buying a company when you say, oh, I've got 900 clients, I've got 10,000 clients. How do I know they're going to be clients next month? Especially if you're not there. Because if you tell me, well, I have 10,000, let's go with 900. I have 900 clients and they all love me. Well, it sounds like when I buy your company, I'm going to have a hard time keeping those 900 clients.
Yeah. Yeah, that couldn't be more true.
Yeah.
So if I'm buying this so far, which is basically just delivering well is not enough, and then help me pick it up from there.
Yeah.
How does CS become something that isn't something I have to do just when I'm a larger company?
Yep.
How does that tie into referrals? How does that tie into growth?
Yeah. So, well, there's always upsell opportunity within customer success, right? They're not salespeople. They're not coin operated like sales folks are. They, they really want the success of their client. So I love the quote. His last name is Singh, and I can't remember his first name at this point, but he says that the purpose of a business is to create customers who create more customers. So why would a customer choose to give you a referral? They would choose to give you a referral if they're so happy with what you've done and you've made them so successful that they think other people could benefit, and they identify the value that they're getting being directly associated to the services that your company has to offer, which is why it is really important for MSPs to understand what value they have instead of just whatever that is plugged into my wall, right? Like, I'm sure I can go buy whatever that is ensuring I have internet in the room I'm standing in. I'm sure I can go buy that at Office Depot. I mean, I'm going to have to take it with me so I can ask them what it is, right?
Sure.
That's not the value that MSPs are delivering. And that is where I always talk about QBRs with customer success with QBRs as the foundation. That is why QBRs need to be the foundation of your sales process and your customer success process, because it is that conversation that is going to establish what your business goals are, and where I am going to explain to you how I'm going to help you get those business goals without telling you the name of the flux capacitor plugged into my wall, right?
Yeah.
What I am going to tell you is that, Marnie, you can walk upstairs, downstairs, out on the dock, out in your front yard, and you can stay connected all of the time because you work remotely from home. And I'm 100% confident you don't want to stand in that 2 foot by 2 foot section all day long to be able to work on. All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I, in fact, do have that. I can be in my garage. I can be in the gazebo, right? Like, that matters to me. Telling me that they was going to buy 3 flux capacitors, could care less. It's like, so that is where customer success builds the relationship that I understand that first the MSP understands my needs and their focus is on helping accomplish my goals, not on selling flux capacitors. But now, so Kenny, who happened to be the best man at my wedding, so I'm not on the market for an MSP because my guy, I trade in Doritos and chocolate chip cookies, right? But he very much knows what I need and want. And so he will call and say like, hey, you need this, and explains why, because he knows what it is I need. So I told him that I was doing a lot more podcasts. And so he said, we're going to hardwire you because like I have 600 upload speed, right? Blazing fast, as the internet tells me. And he said, your Wi-Fi's fine. Like, you all can stream in here, but if you're going on streaming platforms, you need this. Okay, good argument. I don't care what it is. And that's the conversation that MSPs need to have in QBRs, not tell me how many Optiplex 750s we're talking about here.
So how do I make that transition if that's me? If I'm used to, a lot of us, like I was an MSP and I was a tech guy that started, that was an MSP, right? I think that's probably the more typical. And so if I am the technical background, and even if I know enough to not just come in and totally be geek speak, I still think there's a gap, at least there was for me, in trying to ask the right questions to really get at business issues. And then what that led to in mine is saying the same things, jumping to conclusions, saying that everybody, I have one insurance company, you probably want the exact same thing, and things like that. So how do I try to bridge the gap of like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be geek speak, but how do I go past that to really understand the value?
So I do think it's about questions. But for folks so what I often find in this conversation is that folks feel a little anxiety when I start talking about it because they realize they have already got clients and haven't established this relationship. So I'd like to talk about it in two ways. I'd like to talk about like what you should do differently immediately for any prospect that you're talking to. And then let's go back and recover the folks that you're already working with that did not know that you actually owned a tie and a suit and were going to come talk and deliver bagels. They thought you only ever showed up in jeans and t-shirts and crawled under tables with cables, right? You've started, you are good at tech and like to help people. So I don't want anyone to think I don't think MSPs want to help people just because they don't focus on customer success. That's how you got this gig, because you were really good at tech and you really liked helping people and fixing problems. So you've got this in you. You just didn't think, because so many will, wholeheartedly say that they're introverted. You just didn't think you had that side in you. For the record, when I take the test, I'm 70% introverted, and nobody listening to this is thinking, no, she's not. Like nobody's thinking, yeah, I was suspecting she's an introvert. So you've got some clients. We're going to let them go for a minute. What do you do with prospects that you want to show them that you get customer success? And you don't need to say those words to them. They don't even need to know that, right? But how do you show? So when you are talking to prospects, you want to ask them questions about their business goals and objectives. And then you, the magician that is the technology guru, will be able to connect their goals with solutions you can offer them. So you are not going to ask them right out of the gate how many endpoints they have. You can get there. You can ask them that in the first meeting, but not first. Please, let's not start there. That sounds like you're trying to find a way to sell the same number of endpoints in a seat. Like, you'll have to get there, but that's not where you start. So first, I do hope you Google stalked their website and took a look to see if you could figure out any of their company goals or mission, because you should be able to know something and take a guess at what might be important to them based on what their website says. And then you should ask them about it. Like, oh, you're a nonprofit. So do you struggle? Like, what do nonprofits struggle with? Staying within budget and doing with minimum resources, right? We've been able, now you mentioned the insurance agent thing, like if one has it, do they all do the exact same thing? Don't assume they need the same technology solution, but you can ask questions around common problems. So we work with other nonprofits that really need our help in some productivity tools to help them do more with less. Is that a problem that you have in your nonprofit? Right? I haven't said a single tool yet. A lot of our nonprofits, wish they could attract more fundraising through better websites, et cetera, but haven't had the time, capacity, and team to be able to build those things, right? Now, I suspect as a former MSP, you know exactly what projects you're going to pitch based on how I answered that question. And I know the theme of those projects, even though I don't know exactly what you're going to sell me, right? One MSP that I worked with, she is she is a superior VCIO. You would not want to compete with her MSP because she is so talented. She showed me one of her quarterly business reviews. She was working with a client who had said that their goals for the year their growth goals were to grow through acquisition. And so she said, your business goal is growth through acquisition. Our technology aligned goal for you then is to create a standard of technology so that we can help integrate your team as fast as possible with anyone you acquire. And in my mind, again, not as an MSP, I immediately see, oh my gosh, she just got them to sign off on rip and replace with all of her tools. As soon as they acquire someone else, you know who doesn't win? The acquiring company's MSP. You're out of luck. If you own that MSP, you're not getting that contract. She is, right? So talking about, is your company growing, contracting? Are you adding, head count? Are you hiring? Why do you want to know when they're hiring? Just 2 weeks ago, I was talking to an MSP who said, yeah, on Friday, they told me they've got somebody coming in on Monday and they want me to configure a device for them because they don't have a backup, right? And then the company wanted to know why they were charging emergency rates. Well, because you didn't communicate, right?
Right.
So, they're all the same stories you hear all the time, but you hear them because they're true. So ask, what's new in your industry?
And obviously, like using your example, they didn't just hire somebody in a day.
Right. Correct.
They had to think about a job description. They posted it, or they at least hired a recruiter. There was a process. They made it to the final three. Right there were
steps along this path.
There were multiple steps, and they were not a day. Long.
So can we talk about the process for hiring? And you want to spend less on me? Stop doing that. Let's have a conversation about where I should be inserted into your process, right? And help them document the process along the way. So, those are the types of questions that get them thinking. I think the other two things are, if you could dream up a technology, what would it do for you? I think the easy one is, what are you doing? What is someone in your company doing by hand every day that you wish you could automate? And then, of course, what keeps you up at night? Now, I think a lot of folks lead with that because of cybersecurity, but it can't be the only thing you lead with because, and I talk about in the book that the people can only live in crisis mode for so long. So when a new breach happens, they'll be anxious about it for a minute, but they don't make any money on being more cyber secure. So it's a protection play, but they're not making money that way. So it still feels like a sacrifice. So, there's a trade-off for them. So
thank you for bringing that up because I feel like we miss that as an industry. And it would, if it's like, I feel like if your insurance carrier calls you, if you have a good relationship, you want to know that you have the right coverage, the appropriate amount. Maybe your business has grown. Maybe you're under insured.
Yeah.
So that's a valid conversation. Yeah. But frankly, I just don't get too excited about buying more insurance.
No, not at all.
It's a cost, of doing business, and it doesn't make me more money. I need the appropriate protection. And I feel like that's a little bit where those sort of things fall. But, we're so excited to talk about the flex capacitors, and it might make us money to get more dollars. Yeah. But, I love that you're talking about automation. I love that you're talking about productivity. I love that you're talking about, a technology you wish existed or could happen.
Yeah.
Because those things actually have an ROI.
Yes. Yeah. I think the other piece that MSPs have access to is data that could help clients be more efficient and productive, right? There's a reason to have an asset refresh policy. But I swear the way a solid, I don't want to be dismissive, but I'll say 50% come at that conversation is, well, every 3 years you're going to buy new computers. Oh, I honestly, don't tell me that. That just makes me insane. You can convince me that there are reasons on why updated software and hardware keeps me more productive, less frustrated. That I can hear. But you just telling me that my computer that worked today is suddenly magically not going to work tomorrow, I don't buy that story at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having the language around those conversations, I think, is important too, because it's the same conversation. I did just sell a whole 3-year asset refresh policy without saying, well, every 3 years you're going to buy new computers. Oh, that sentence should not come into play ever.
Well, if you're listening, I'm not great at this, but you, on average, if you're listening, you're on average, you're not either.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I know is I will ask some of these questions to you as your vendor, right? To all my MSPs.
Yeah.
And I don't like vendor partner, but I genuinely want to know, like, what do you wish existed?
Yeah.
What are your biggest challenges? And sometimes it's like productivity, customer success, efficiency, hiring, it often has nothing to do with backup and disaster recovery.
Yeah.
But I still want to know what they are.
Yeah.
An MSP could fix more of those things than maybe what my business does. But I still need to understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, then you get their
what
priorities.
you're facing.
Right. When you understand their priorities, you see where you fit in them and can help them budget for it. Like that's another data point that MSPs can absolutely help with. We had so many partners that became overwhelmingly successful, like tripled MRR within a year when they got a quarterly business review in place that included delivering a budget for that very reason that you just said.
So now you're speaking the language. Tell me about double or tripling MRR.
Yeah. Let's hear about that.
What's the average MSP growth? I'm not sure I know.
Yeah,
it's like
not
one client a month. It's like nothing. It's I don't know, single digits, 10 or 15%,
it's
or
not
maybe
300%.
It's not a lot of growth.
Yeah.
So getting to double or triple would take you a long time as the typical MSP.
So it's interesting. One of our MSPs talked about how actually, I've got several stories in mind. I've got 2 that I'm thinking of specifically that intentionally use their customer success process to decide which clients were not ideal clients and worked their way out of that contract. They didn't fire them, right? Like I'm happy to talk about how that was a pleasant situation and not a horrendous. So one had 105 clients when he started with us. He intentionally pruned 35 of those clients and then acquired 2 more clients. So net they're down 33 clients and they tripled MRR. So how do you do that? Right? Like
105 to 80 something, right? If I'm doing math in my head, 87 or so, and tripling MRR, that sounds way better.
Way better. Yeah.
Right. Per employee and just, and per, customer revenue and just frustration.
Well, and his ability to scale now that he's got a process in place, he now can take off and run. Right. So, we mentioned what happened. What do you do with the clients you already have? So we're kind of looping back to that. How do we get customer success and QBRs to be a part of that process? So the first thing he did was really sat down with himself basically and said, what kind of business do I want to be? Do I want to be a strategic partner, the elusive trusted advisor, all of those things? And the answer was yes. I want to be basically a business consultant that uses, I always say, how do I help deliver business outcomes with a thoughtful use of technology? That was the story that he wanted to sell. So in the customer success book, we talk about segmenting your clients, and we talk about, putting MRR, how much they pay you, versus effort. And it could be effort, it could be complexity, it can be pain in the behind, scoring. Basically, that's what you're looking for. And you've got 4 quadrants there, right? So you've got high paying, high effort clients. Department of Defense, they pay you a lot, but guess what? That's because you have to do a lot of things for them. There's compliance issues all over the place, cybersecurity, frameworks, all the things, right? You've got high paying, low effort clients. They're your favorites. Let's go get more of them, right? You've got low paying, low effort clients. They're okay. They're fairly automated. You can probably do a lot of them and they may grow into your other quadrant. And then you've got the the low paying, rather high effort, pain in the behind clients. And so what our partner did was he took a look at who was in that quadrant. And if you've not talked to Dave Cava and Sean Walsh about the Pumpkin Plan for MSPs, you should, because they talk about like, you have to get rid of those pumpkins. You can
You do.
renegotiate so they pay higher. You can convince them that their server from 1902 is causing all of these problems and sell them the proper equipment so they become ease of use, they become low paying and low effort, or you fire them. So that is where the 35 clients came from. He decided that he was putting everyone on I'm no longer break fix. Everybody gets on a managed plan. You are now paying a rate, and every 3 years, like your computer refresh is built in. So I'm never going to be surprised every 3 years that I've got, seven $1,500 devices I have to buy. It's all inclusive. And if you can get on board with this program, we want you as a client. But if you don't believe in my special sauce, I'll find you somebody else. So that's how we got rid of the 35. And then everyone else was on board with, I am going to be your strategic advisor. You are going to give me all of your contracts because I'm going to help you create a full technology cost of ownership budget. And that's game changing, because right now, I would say the majority of MSPs clients think of them and technology apart from their business instead of a part of their business. But when you are in charge of delivering the full budget, including their line of business application, their cybersecurity, insurance policy, their ISP provider, their VoIP provider, all those things, even if you are not the one delivering it to them, then they realize technology is actually running their darn business, and you're a critical piece of it. So the partner that I'm thinking of has been invited to sit at the table. Like, he goes to their monthly leadership meetings, and they love having him from an outside perspective, because the first time he asked them for their contracts, he found they had 17 locations. And in COVID, when they went remote, they bought 17 different VoIP providers. And so he was able to eliminate all of them. He sold them the VoIP service that he gets a kickback on, right? And streamlined everything. So they're like, yeah, we want someone from a third party perspective to actually look at our business when they're not living in it every day, which is brilliant.
I love that. Yeah, getting that trusted advisor. And I think there's some fear. I would say sometimes just apprehension, but sometimes fear. I'm used to going in. And that's what, if you're listening, I would challenge you, because when I was in MSP, it was a long time ago. And so it wasn't good then. But if you're still saying you're going to buy the same RM tool and buy the same cybersecurity stack and then be different or better and not ask any questions to differentiate yourself, then, you're deluding yourself. So how do I overcome the fear of, this sounds like a lot of work. I don't know if I can ask those questions. Aren't we just I think there's too many stuck in like the infrastructure view.
Yeah.
Like, don't we just provide the IT and answer help desk? And it's very different to be a strategic advisor. It's certainly very different to, review their contracts, to sit down with an equal kind of seat at the board.
Yeah. I mean, and there's certainly steps to get there, right? Although it is easier, I think it really comes down to asking the questions. And so many folks have imposter syndrome. I certainly do, right? Like, I mean, I tell MSPs what to do all day, every day, and I never was one, right? But what I do well is ask questions, right? And I don't necessarily think I have the answer, but I bet you do, and I can help pull it out of you. And that really is what customer success is about, right? When I went and worked, so I worked with, of the 200 largest school districts in the country, we worked with more than half of them. So for sure, I didn't see all the problems that had ever happened, but I was able to see quite a few. And one thing that I think where MSPs have a huge advantage is that in working with many businesses, you see a lot of the same problems. Now, you can't go in presumptuous and say, I know exactly what your problems are without asking questions. But when you ask the questions, I mean, one of my favorite selling lines is to say, well, I work with a lot of other partners like you, and the problem that they have is this. Do you have that same problem? We were able to help them with that problem. This is what, I won't claim that I ever use this line. This was Alex's line, and it's a good one. We were able to solve that problem for about $3,000 a month. Like, is that is that in your budget, or is that problem not a big enough problem for you? When you can wrap that into getting down to the budget piece of it to sort of gauge if this is going to be a good partner for you, I think that's a good way to do it.
I love that. So tell me, we've talked a lot about kind of the new prospects. Tell me about, do I approach the existing folks the same way?
Yeah, no. Because with the new folks, you can just tell them this is part of your process and that we'll all be coming to quarterly business reviews because you're going to discuss business because you're helping them with the business, right? So that's easy if they're new. But if you haven't already established that relationship, that would be a shocking conversation to have. I said this to one consultant who was like, well, that's the most earth-shattering thing I've ever heard. And it was because I said, well, you might just have to give him an apology. And he was like, what? I said, yeah. Like, did you go to your last business? Have they ghosted you on the last 3, quarterly business review calls because the last time you gave them one, it was simply terrible? You talked tech the whole time, right? So if you're being ghosted, or they're saying, no, we're good. Or
you don't have QBRs.
Yeah, or don't have them, right? If you had a poor one, you could just apologize and say like, I wanted to reach out, Damien, and say like the last time we chatted, I'm a tech nerd. I was super excited about all the flux capacitors, and that is really not the way I would like to have a conversation. I would love to sit down with you and hear about your business goals so I can make sure the technology I offer you, that the solutions I have may be helpful. Would you be willing to have that chat with me, right? You might have to have an intermediate chat to convince them that you're not coming to sell anything. If it has been debacle-ish, I would suggest just reaching out to the decision maker and ask for like, I'd like to just grab you a coffee and hear how business is going to see if there's any way I could help you save. We're helping clients. If you say the save word, that will help, right? We've helped a lot of clients save on their cybersecurity liability insurance. We've helped them reduce a head count because of productivity tools. So I'd love to hear where your issues are. And take it outside of the normal space where the bad thing happened, right? If you did have a bad business review. If you've never had them before, then it's the same conversation without minus the apology, right? So for the record, apologies work, even if you apologize about the weather, because it makes people want to do something for you. So that's a little psychological trick if, you might want to offer an apology anyway.
I love that. Be open, right? Be vulnerable. Apologize,
exactly.
Right? It's a great way to build rapport. Tell me about. So I was paying attention to your book, and maybe if I understood it right, maybe it's not always a QBR.
Correct.
Okay. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So there are lots of conversations you can have with a client, right? And it's interesting I think about your low value, low effort clients where you have a bunch of them, right? And they're not paying you enough to drive out, have a quarterly business review, bring bagels, etc.
Right.
What do you do with them? MSPs are the masters of automation. So why don't you put that to work for you? So you've got a marketing platform. You can remarket to your existing clients. So I like to say this quite a bit. If you are not talking to your clients, somebody else is. So you might think, I don't need to advertise my cybersecurity tools to my existing clients because they already have them. Well, let me tell you what your client really doesn't know that they have, right? They don't know they've got backups. They don't know they have securities. You need to remind them. So as October comes up, like, hey, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. You're in good hands with us, right? Don't forget, we have all backups all the time. We have, this tool, etc. If you ever have any additional concerns, reach out. We'd love to help, right? So you're remarketing, you're having the same conversation you would have. You could absolutely send them their asset. You can just automate sending them their budget, right? That is why we built Lifecycle Insights, is to be able to deliver a budget quickly to let them see what's coming up. Small businesses don't have the time. Truly small businesses don't have the time to spend 4 hours in a quarterly business review, but they still need the same information. So use your automation to get it to them that way. The other thing that I found really successful when I ran customer success was doing anything in bulk, like a regional user meeting, a lunch and learn for your existing partners, and build a community of folks that want to learn. So one of our partners, he got together with a bank and an insurance company, and they did a webinar called Stop, Drop, and Roll. This is how you respond to a cybersecurity incident. And they invited so think about this in terms of prospecting. The bank invited all of their partners, the insurance company invited all of their partners, and the MSP invited all of his partners. All three parties got to talk about their role in an incident. And so when the banking customers are listening, feeling good about what their bank's doing to protect them, but realize they have some technology issues, who are they going to turn to? The guy that just talked to him about it, right? So some of that bulk, you can do that with all of your existing clients. And of course, you don't share customer data on that call, but if you sent it to them ahead of time and say, hey, Friday at 3, we're going to have a conversation around what all this means with all of our clients, so you can hear and just go through a generic version of the report. How many folks just got their business review? And then the other piece in the book, after you've segmented your clients, is we talked about how often they should get a quarterly business review, because not everybody needs them quarterly. Now, that's not always popular said, because a lot of the big names in the industry always say quarterly reviews need to be done quarterly. But those same people are assuming that you're charging $200, $300 a seat. If someone is paying you $200 or $300 a seat, then yeah, they probably deserve a quarterly business review. But if they are not, then they might deserve a semi-annual, an annual, or an automated one.
Yeah. It seems like somebody in the book said something about a rule of thumb based on MRR.
Yeah. So, I think it was Alex Rogers maybe who suggested, and Rex Frank also, I've talked to him about it. Rex Frank has changed since the book came out, so I will give his updated one. He talks about that for every $1,500 per month they spend with you, that is how many business reviews they should get in a year. So at $1,500, you would get an annual review. At $3,000, you would get 2 a year, semi-annual, right? But so that means 1,500 times 12, right? If they're spending that much a month, then you actually do monthly business reviews with them.
There was a part I found interesting talking about, I kind of see things like math. CS equals CX plus CO.
Yeah.
So break down the acronyms. I know we're tech people, so we like acronyms, but if you don't mind, break down that equation and acronyms and what it means.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite equations. So that is customer success equals customer experience plus customer outcomes. So a lot of times you hear folks use customer experience and customer success interchangeably. But experience is just what it feels like to work with you. You can be a really nice guy and incompetent. So
it's true.
that is like great experience, nice guy. Yeah, none of my technology works, right? So
most of us started that way, whether we admit it or not, right? Yeah.
So that is why you have to tie together the outcome and the experience. So a lot of folks, and I think this is what you were saying at the beginning, like, well, we got the outcome we needed. The technology is working. Yes, but remember, 83% of people will stick with you because of the experience, even if they're paying more. That's pretty telling that they want both the relationship and the experience and the outcome. So either one of them missing is a threat. And the interesting piece is if you are delivering the outcomes and you don't have the customer experience, you are more likely to have that unexpected churn. They're more likely to just blindside you and drop you, and you had no idea. And,
I've had MSPs tell me about that, right? Because, they get blindsided because they're like, well, everything just works so well for them. And the problem is somebody else talks to them and, it's 30% less. And you're like, hey, IT doesn't really break, well, I'll switch.
Yep. Right. Because they have no idea. I mean, I see it on the on posts all the time of like how MSPs are having to help the client that ousted them, or the other MSP that has ousted them because the client didn't realize really what they were getting. And that's what I was saying earlier. If you're not talking to your clients, somebody else is. And that is, in the book we talk about after you've segmented your client and you've decided whether it's one you want to keep or not. We also talk about you should score them on how healthy they are and what makes for a healthy client, right? Are they having those conversations with you? Do they buy into your standards and best practices, right? Is it when I call this client, they will absolutely do whatever I say because they know I've got their best interest in mind? That's a happy, healthy client. If somebody hasn't purchased a new project from you in over a year, I'll be the first to tell you you're in risk of churn. And you need to mark them down as red, right? Like stoplights work for a reason. So you should have this list. This is what we did in Lifecycle Insights, right? Was to automate the red, yellow, green of this. But if nothing else, create a darn spreadsheet and red, yellow, green it for yourself so that you know where you're at risk. It's a scary activity the first time you do this. If you've never done this before, the book is a whopping $4.99 on Amazon. So just go get it so you can follow the activity.
Some books, I will say, are worth the price. This is worth far more, right? This should give you a lot more than $5 return. Just the spreadsheet you're talking about alone, just the customer health alone, would be well worth more than $5.
Well, it was more of just educating folks to do the right way, right? It's just the right thing. So we weren't trying to make money on a book. We were just trying to help folks figure out what they need to do. But you need to track what makes for a healthy client. And I promise you, the first time you do this, I know everyone's sitting around thinking like, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to go figure this out. And then when you start looking and ranking, you are going to be nervous. And when you are nervous, because sometimes it takes pain to take action, right? You said people think they don't really need customer success because everything's going fine. Well, you go figure out that spreadsheet and I'll have caused the pain that you need to take some action. And that's
and if you don't, then in my experience, you'll end up losing a major client.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe not, you'll lose a small one. Maybe you won't change, but eventually you'll lose one of the substantial ones.
Things have to be different.
Yeah.
And from there, we talk about a care plan or a CPR plan is what one of our clients had. If you see someone in the red, you've got to decide what action you're going to take to fix it. Or if that's a client you wanted to lose anyway. Right. So you do 2 ratings of you segment them into the quadrants. You now know on your chart where they fall. And then you color them red, yellow, and green. If I've got a high value, high effort client that's red. So if you think about it, high value and high effort, you might think, well, maybe I don't want high effort client. So this high effort client is HIPAA compliant, PCI, there's something, Department of Defense, they're following all the acronym frameworks. So you probably have a human, at least one headcount that is supporting that client. So if you're thinking maybe I don't want them as a client, you also better realize that might mean you have to lose an employee as well, right? So if that client leaves and you're thinking oh, great, I don't have that pain anymore. Well, that income was supporting the work of a human. So you might want to rethink that.
Yeah, I love that. So speaking of the people, who's this best done by in an MSP?
So many times it starts as the owner, right? Because they've got the relationship. I'm just a quote woman. Apparently I don't have any new ideas. I just quote other people's ideas, but I'll steal this one too. I believe it was Warren Buffett that said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So that is why MSPs owners are resistant to hiring a customer success person, because they are afraid that when they hand over the relationship, someone's going to trash it, right? And so, I'm a big fan of hiring teachers. Why? Because teachers are really good at English to English translators, right? I am very good at not knowing what I'm talking about in terms of that thing on the wall and still convincing somebody they should buy it, right? Because I can translate your need. You need internet everywhere in the house. So therefore, just trust my tech guy who's going to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want folks who are like, there are customer facing humans that prefer to engage with folks. And not, that's not the same as a salesperson. I said at the beginning of the call that sales folks are often coin operated, right? And the salesperson is going to go after the upsell. And I'm sure many folks listening are thinking like, yeah, I want them to go after the upsell.
Right.
A customer success person is going to want to solve the business problem and help the end client. And they are going to advocate both for what's best for the business as well as what's best for the customer. So what they're not going to get you in trouble with is a bad fit client. If you, the world's about some KPIs or OKRs, right? If you give someone a quota that forces them to sell a solution that is not the right solution for everyone, you're rewarding the wrong behavior and you're going to get bad fit clients, and that's not good for your business. So a customer success person, if you are interviewing for this position, you should ask them to tell you stories about their, like, tell me a way you have helped, a previous customer, and they will then, like, you'll be able to hear from their answer of like, are they coin operated? Did they sell them a tool they needed, or did they solve a problem that they needed?
I love that. Is that, once you get a little larger, is that only the owner, and who's the next person? Is that the chief technical officer or maybe my head tech? Is that better fit if it's like the service desk manager or head of delivery? Or do we need to go outside and hire a pure CS person?
So that typically happens around 10 or 11, 9 or 10-ish employees, right? When you hire pure customer success. I see more folks, it's interesting.
I hear you say that, but I know most 10-person MSPs don't even use the word customer success, let alone have hired one full time.
Correct. But that is really when you need a process
20 employees that don't have a, CS.
At 9 to 10 is where you typically have the need for the processes in place and start handing over the relationship. So it could be a service desk coordinator, right? It's definitely a customer facing someone. The first time you have the process, it'll probably be a team of 3 because you're going to have your engineer that can help inform the QBR, but you might be able to have a help desk person look at tickets, see what their problems are, etc. It's interesting when folks first come in, sometimes you'll find a help desk person that really wants to accelerate in the technical half of it or on the customer success side of it. I say that because I birthed one of those, and he is very much customer success focused. He's very technical, but he absolutely is kind and wants to help and is good with people and can talk to you about your problems. And so it's a good place to start there to see who can build those good relationships.
I love that. I don't interview many people that can say they birthed one of them.
I definitely did.
That's amazing. Right?
Well, there are a lot of guys in the space, so none of them are saying they birthed one. They may have had one, but I actually birthed one. Yeah.
I love that. That is mic drop moment right there. Like, who's going to compete with that in this space? I wanted to mention a kind of personal touch and how this fits in, especially with that. And you mentioned like automation. I wanted to switch gears because you talk about you see MSPs and you value and businesses value automation, but not losing the personal touch. So how do we do that? I know I'm guilty as a tech person that's been an MSP to just like, let's automate everything. And then, there's no personal touch left.
Yeah, for sure. So from the end client perspective, you need to ask them like, what's really important that helps to establish the personality of your business, because we don't want to lose that through automation. And then you need to think about the same for your business, right? Are you fine with an automated answering machine? And if you're like, yeah, I am, because they need to route that way, is there a way you can put your personality into that. That's sort of the marketing of it. And so I think when you're talking to clients, you need to talk about like, where are those opportunities to show the personality, right? Because that's a lot of what the customer success brings to the party. I think when you're training customer success, that, if you're hiring someone for it, you need to make sure you have those conversations around culture and core values so that everyone knows how they're going to, everyone needs to know that. Your help desk needs to know that. Engineers need to know that. But customer success really needs to know how they're presenting themselves because they're presenting your company.
Right. Now, that way we don't over automate.
Yeah, correct.
Right. Because if I got anything out of this, one of the things is I'm not dropping off a report.
Correct. 100%.
I'm not emailing a PDF once a quarter.
No, please.
That's not a QBR.
Yeah.
Since I've also learned that it doesn't necessarily need to happen quarterly.
Yeah.
What do I call this?
Strategic business review, executive business review, periodic business review. I've heard them all.
Okay.
I like strategic myself. Some say technical business review, but again, that sounds technical. I'd rather have it.
Yeah. Rather talk business, rather be the strategic or advisor.
Yeah.
I got it. I'd love to get your perspective as a kind of self-professed non-technical person.
Yes.
How do we balance the automation and personal touch and helping our clients in this AI thing?
Always give an eject button where they can actually get a human. Right.
I love that.
Like, I want automation because that's surely a lot easier, and I'm working at 7:30 at night. I don't need to disturb anybody. So self-help as much as possible, and eject button that'll say, take me to a human.
I love that.
Right? I think
short and sweet.
In the world of character revolution, right, the thing that'll make you stand out is your character traits, your soft skills. So make sure you have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, eject and get a real human. You say that, I think if you look at MSP websites, and probably most websites, but MSP specifically, if we look back a decade ago, I think there was a lot more phone numbers on there.
For sure. Oh my goodness, and heaven forbid somebody get an MSP cell phone number. You'll hear the diatribe for sure. But yeah, to be able to access a human makes a world of difference.
Yeah. I think there's too much. Just submit a ticket, and sometimes you're like, okay, I'll do it. But sometimes I need an eject button, which I love how you frame that. I love that. Sometimes do you need to eject and parachute down and land safely.
Yeah. Exactly.
We talked about automation. We talked about leadership, business value reviews. I've enjoyed, by the way, love your MSP Owner's Handbook. If you're an owner of an MSP or anything like that, definitely read the MSP Owner's Handbook. And, of course, we've talked about literally the book on customer success for MSPs. You've got the QBR edition.
I do.
But I want to talk, since we spent so much time about leadership, and I think we could talk a whole episode, so we may have to do that. But tell me about the new book behind you.
So, that is Lead It Like Lasso. So, it is our story and leadership framework paralleled with the antics of AFC Richmond and the TV show Ted Lasso. So, if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, it's a fish out of water story. He is an American football coach who went and coached European football. And there were 2 full internets of things he didn't know about football, but we learned a lot about coaching. And in the same 3 years that Ted Lasso aired, those are the same 3 years we scaled and sold Lifecycle Insights. And very much fish out of water, right? I was a high school math teacher as CEO of a tech company in the tech space, like in the land of fish out of water. That's it, right? I'm the only one birthing CS people in here, right? So we wrote the book. It's got some awards. It's really been pretty fantastic. And we are building a masterclass on it. So if people are interested in personal leadership, so you can be a leader in a boardroom, a locker room, a living room, right? And then you need to learn to lead yourself as well. So we really tried to make it a very human leadership, not just I'm CEO of a company leadership book. So it's called a leadership book for life, your life is the subtitle.
So you might still take me if I'm a CEO.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. All CEOs welcome. But we've had a lot of parents, a lot of college students, a lot of teachers, book clubs, Someone bought 300 copies the other day. Their whole company's getting copies of the book because they want everyone to see their own leadership role in their org.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
This was wonderful. Thank you, Marnie.
Yeah,
I know
great.
I could take your time all day, but I would love to, but I shouldn't. Thank you so much for being on MSP Mindset. This has been amazing.
Thank you.